awesome day today. As always, welcome back to another video. So today I am out on my 2003 Honda CBR 600RR on a very lovely dusky evening here in the spring. And a thought came to my mind about what kind of motorcycle is right for you, in the sense that what motorcycle should you buy? If you're out in the market for a motorcycle, maybe it's your first or maybe it's your second motorcycle, what kind of bike should you go for? So I'm going to try and answer that question for you in an open-minded way, and to try and encourage you as well to stay open-minded about your choices. So there are loads and loads of different types of motorcycles you can get out there. There are cruiser boys, there are sport bikes, there are sports tourers, there are touring bikes, there are dirt bikes, there are supermotos, there are dual sports, there are adventure bikes. I don't know if I've missed any, enduros, but there are loads and loads of different kinds of bikes out there that you can buy. So how on earth do you figure out what the right bike is for you? Well, let's have a think here. Think about why you got into motorcycles to begin with. Like, what was the main thing that drew you to motorcycles? Was it things like MotoGP? Was it motorcycles like in what you'd see in Wild Hogs, the movie, where they're riding cruisers? Do you watch Speedway and you like those kinds of bikes, or dirt bikes, things like that? Is that what made you look into motorcycles? Try and think about your inspiration, and then you could probably make a judgment from there about which direction you want to start off in. So for me, I got into motorcycles quite early on in my life. Maybe when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I'd always had this fascination with motorcycles. I can't think specifically at which point I was like, yeah, I want to ride a motorcycle, or I want to buy a motorcycle. But one thing I can tell you is there were certain films that came out at the time that piqued my interest. There were certain events that I'd gone to that also helped me, that also kept my interest high. Things like MotoGP, the race bikes, that kind of thing. I always love looking at those and imagining myself on one, as you do when you're a kid. But yeah, try and think of those experiences that you had. Try and think about where those interests come from, and then you can go from there. But of course, that's not going to be the be-all end-all, you know. If you end up, loving sport bikes and you're like, yeah, I want to buy a sport bike, and you end up buying a sport bike, but you actually end up hating the damn thing, then, well, you haven't made the right decision. Even though you might love sport bikes, it might not be the right bike for you, especially if, I don't know, if you have back problems or back pains or wrist problems, carpal tunnel, that kind of thing. It might be difficult for you to get a sport bike, but there are alternatives. You can get yourself a sports tourer, which have the sport bike looks. They have slightly more aggressive seating positions, but they're way more comfortable. They often have as much power. They often have the same amount of power as their sport bike variants. They might not have that peak horsepower that sport bikes have, but they have a lot of torque. So you definitely get a lot of fun out of a torquey motorcycle. So the best thing that you should do is that if you like a particular type of motorcycle, but you're not sure if it is the right one for you, feel free to go and test ride one. If you've had a look at an R3 or an R6 from Yamaha, then feel free to go down to a local dealership and go and test ride one. See what you think of it. See how it feels, if it feels comfortable. But try not to do a short test ride. Try and do, you know, a significant one, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. A longer ride so you can get a full know-how, or so you can get a full experience of what the bike feels like to ride, how it handles. I mean, by the same token, it's very easy to get carried away by things like the power, you know, if you ride a motorcycle that has lots of power and lots of torque. It's very easy to, you know, just fall in love with that aspect of the bike and then just forget about all the other things. So it's one of those things that you really, really need to consider carefully, and it is a big investment. Buying a motorcycle is a big investment, so you don't really want to screw it up. Especially when you start spending thousands and thousands of pounds or dollars, you know? Yeah, it does become an expensive hobby, and if you're not enjoying your riding experience, then it's not worth it, you know? You have to enjoy it. Like, I'm just out here on a, you know, on a Monday night cruise just to get some fresh air and, you know, get some relief from the stress of work and things like that, you know? These are the kind of things that you can expect to get out of a motorcycle ride, but only if you enjoy it, if you're relaxed and you have an opportunity just to clear your mind and all that. It can act like a meditation almost, you know? And yeah, of course, you can definitely get thrills on them as well, you know? If you're looking to get some anger out and things, then yeah, you can, by all means, you know, rip up some corners and twisties, you know? So yeah, there are loads of reasons why you should get into motorcycling to begin with, but that's not really the topic that we're discussing in this video. We're talking about, you know, what motorcycle you should get. So from that perspective, once you've thought about your interests and your inspirations behind why you want a motorcycle, what kind of motorcycles have you seen, what do you like the look of, then that's the opportunity to go out and test ride some. Give yourself a list of different bikes, but don't be silly and all pick sport bikes or something like that. I mean, okay, if you are in the market for a sport bike, then feel free to put in maybe 1 or 2 different sport bikes just to test them out. And even sport bikes, even though they're aggressive in their seating positions and the way they ride and things like that, they are different. You ride an R6, it's going to be different to this CBR. In where the power band is, in how comfortable it is. You might find that riding a Honda actually ends up being more comfy than riding an R6. And of course, by the same token, you might get the complete opposite, where you're looking around for a sport bike thinking, oh yeah, that's the kind of bike I want, but then you actually find that they're all super uncomfortable and you don't want to ride any. And so you end up looking elsewhere for things like sports tourers or touring motorcycles. There are plenty of options out there for everyone. But it is an important decision, your first couple of motorcycles, because that's what either makes or breaks your love of riding. So yeah, be sure to pick wisely. And of course, you know, make sure you don't regret your decision to buy a specific bike. I'm sure that there are loads and loads of you guys out there that are experienced riders that have probably bought a ride that you weren't overly pleased with, you know? I think we've all been there. Especially for me in my early career, where, you know, I bought the Chinese bikes. You know, like, yeah, they did the job and fine, but I didn't know about about the Japanese bikes at the time. I didn't know about the Hondas, I didn't know about the Yamahas or the Kawasaki's. And they all have a lot more to offer than any Chinese motorcycle, I can guarantee it. So if you are in the market for a motorcycle, do not buy Chinese. I cannot reiterate that enough. If you have the money, then buy Japanese. Yes, it's going to cost you probably an extra £1,000 over your budget, or it's going to cost you over £1,000 more than what it would be to buy an equivalent Chinese bike. It might even be more than that, you know. You might see a Chinese bike for £1,000. Well, like for example, if you wanted to get a Honda CBF 125, then yeah, they're probably going to run you about 1,500 quid. Perhaps a little bit less than that if they're a bit older and they got a bit more mileage on them. But the equivalent Chinese motorcycle, literally, that has the exact same styling, the exact same looks, it just has a different name on it, then yeah, you could be looking to pay up to half of that amount, because they're just, well, one, they don't hold their value, but there's a reason why they don't hold their value, because they're just garbage. They are absolutely garbage machines, and you might not realize it at first, but I mean, to be fair to Chinese bikes, they do have a purpose, I suppose, in teaching young riders good lessons, like, you know, like when you drop a bike, that is a very, very important lesson to learn, because most new riders, they will probably drop their first bikes. You know, there's quite a high probability that that's going to happen, so be ready for that. And of course, if you drop a Chinese motorcycle, then I suppose it doesn't matter so much, does it? But if you pay a little bit more for a Japanese equivalent, then yeah, you're not going to have a good day. Then again, they're not that expensive to repair anyway, you know. The Chinese bikes, they might be cheap to buy, and they might be cheap to repair and cheap to run, but honestly, like, you're going to be breaking down a lot more on a Chinese bike anyway. So if you think about it, if you break down, say, once on a Honda, but 4 or 5 times on a Chinese bike over 2 years, well, is it cheaper to repair the Chinese bike at that point? If you're having to pay, say, £100 or maybe 50 quid each time to repair, but then you spend £150 on one repair for the Honda, and it's good for the rest of the time that you own it, you know. So even though the Chinese bikes might seem cheaper from the offset, you might actually find that they're less economical to run and to maintain. Of course, they might just conk out, and it require an engine rebuild for a Chinese bike. And if you get something like that happen to you, and believe me, that could happen quite easily, then it's not worth it, is it? You know, an engine rebuild, even on a Chinese bike, is going to cost you a lot of money. But anyway, guys, I think that'll do for this one. The sun has finally gone down, and it's starting to get a bit colder, so I'm going to end that video here. Let me know in the comment section below what your experiences were. What first 2 bikes did you buy in your careers? And let me know, you know, whether or not you regretted that decision. Let everyone know whether or not it was the right motorcycle for you to buy at the time. Because there are a number of things to consider. You know, you have the expense, you have the looks, you have the comfort, you have the experience, and you also have the reliability. If you find a motorcycle that has all 5 of those things, then you're pretty much good to go, man. You're onto a winner. But it's very, very difficult, especially when you're younger and you're within a limited budget. It's very, very difficult to figure out exactly what that kind of bike is. But yeah, that'll do for this one, guys. Thank you very much for watching. As always, let me know in the comment section below what you think. Share your knowledge and your experiences with the world, and hopefully we'll all become wiser people as a result. Better riders and wiser people. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question, or at least it gives you a set of kind of rules to follow about what kind of motorcycle you should look to buy and whether or not it's right for you. I hope I've answered that. Again, let me know if I have in the comments. If you have any other questions, and again, feel free to let me know. And I'm sure either myself or a load of other people in the community are going to be more than happy to let you know on a few secrets or a few experiences that they have. Yeah. As always, stay mean, ride hard, and I'll see you in the next video.